Oli here, and this is my review of Terror of the Zygons, the first story of the 13th season of classic Doctor Who, starring Tom Baker as the 4th Doctor. Terror of the Zygons is the 80th story overall, it's 4 parts long, and is written by Robert Banks Stewart. And obviously, Terror of the Zygons is the 80th story overall, that means we're pretty much halfway through the classic Who review, so thanks for everyone that's been watching these reviews so far. So the plot of Terror of the Zygons is as follows. Returning to Earth, the Doctor, Sarah, and Harry arrive in the Scottish Highlands to investigate the mysterious destruction of several oil rigs in the North Sea. Local superstition speaks of a deadly threat that lurks in the midst of Tulloch Moor, but the truth is even more disturbing. The legendary Loch Ness Monster is a terrifying cyborg beast which is controlled by the Zygons, an advanced alien race who are desperate to ensure their survival at any cost. The Zygons, in my opinion, is a brilliant story. One of the more iconic stories in the Tom Baker era, and I definitely can see why. The production of the story is very well done. The sets, especially the Zygon spaceship, look really cool and very alien. And I actually love it. I mean, it's probably one of my favorite sets in the Tom Baker era, and I like the oil rig set as well, the model of it. And when it was destroyed by the Scarison, it looked really cool, and especially the Zygon spaceship, the exterior of it, when that blew, that looked really cool as well. And I liked it when that blew up as well. The explosions effects are really cool for the 70s, and it's actually aged, or so to speak. It definitely aged better than some of the explosions we see in the modern day stuff. And this story was pretty much filmed on the it was filmed a bit on location, and it definitely gave it that Scottish feel to it, even though this story wasn't actually filmed in this story wasn't actually filmed in Scotland, even though it was actually set in Scotland. The script was very good. Terror of the Zygons was actually written as a 6-parter, but Robert Holmes definitely decided to reduce it to 4 parts. I think that was a pretty good call by him. The direction by Douglas Camfield was actually very good, and obviously Douglas Camfield has pretty much directed some of the more iconic Doctor Who stories like Inferno, The Invasion, etc., etc. And I think Terror of the Zygons is definitely one of his best directions for Doctor Who. The plot this story was actually very good, very original, and pretty much every single story in season 13 had some form of inspiration from a horror or sci-fi movie, and it definitely had, and this season definitely had some strong showings of sci-fi horror elements. And Terror of the Zygons is actually inspired by Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I'm not really familiar with that, but I think I read it more about it, and it definitely had a shape-shifting plot, and Terror of the Zygons definitely did that shape-shifting plot justice, and it actually made it scary as well. The pacing was very well done. No moment went by I actually felt bored. It was paced really well, and I actually enjoyed that. The Zygons had some very iconic moments, and one of my favorite moments was the part 1 cliffhanger when Sarah Jane was in the Oil Hospital talking to the doctor on the phone, and all of a sudden a Zygon comes in from behind and attacks her, and that was a pretty scary cliffhanger because it's so unexpected because Sarah's just all of a sudden on the phone, and then suddenly this big orange thing just comes up and just attacks her, and then so obviously Sarah screams. I also like the scene in part 3 when Sarah Jane was being chased by Zygon Harry around the barn, and then she gets to the barn, and then I think Zygon Harry actually tries to catch her with a pitchfork, and then he's pretty much trying to kill her. That was a very intense scene. I was actually watching it. I was like, oh my god. Even though I know Sarah Jane obviously survived, it was so intense, and then obviously, I think Sarah climbed up, and then the Zygon Harry climbed up after her, and then I think Zygon Harry tried to thrust forward to try and grab her, but obviously Sarah Jane, I think she moved out of the way, and then the Zygon Harry pretty much flew onto some spikes and pretty much killed him instantly, and that was a very cool scene as well. And obviously another favorite scene of mine was in part 2 when the Doctor was being chased by the Scarison at the end of part 2. And obviously another favorite scene of mine, ironically enough, most of my favorite scenes pretty much come from the endings of the parts, especially in part 4 when the Doctor and Sarah Jane leave Scotland, and then the Duke of Fogel was like to the Brigadier, you should have gotten your return tickets, man, or something like that. So onto the performances, they're all brilliant by this, so to speak. Tom Baker did a great job, and I love how he's carried his confidence over from season 12 over to this season 13. I loved the scene in the Zygon spaceship when he was with the people that the Zygons had kidnapped, they were impersonating. I loved how he pretty much had to I think he got Lamont to actually ask him how one of the controls worked, and the doctor was like, "Oh, this is a self-destruct switch," and it was like, it was pretty cool to this. And I just love Tom Baker's Doctor. He's just so energetic, and even though it pretty much contrasts with the whole dark and dreary of season of the Hinchcliffe era. Obviously, it's a good thing that the fourth Doctor still maintained his humor, and that was pretty cool as well. And I also like the part when in the hospital when the Zygon had actually trapped the Doctor and Sarah in one of the rooms where there was no oxygen. The Doctor pretty much had to like hypnotize Sarah into not breathing so he's able to at least activate the switches so they can both escape. And I obviously liked how the Doctor was able to snap Sarah out of it. Obviously, Benton actually saw them, but then the Doctor was like, "Hey, don't do anything because any wrong move could pretty much kill her because she's not breathing. So any wrong move could pretty much just end her life." And the Doctor was able to snap her out of that. And that was pretty cool. Elizabeth Sladen did a great job as Sarah Jane, and she definitely got to do some heavy lifting on her own, and she did impress. I liked how she was able to find her way into the Zygon spaceship on Fogiel Castle to rescue the real Harry, and obviously she didn't know Harry was in there. But I actually like the scene when she does find Harry, and then Sarah obviously unsure if that was the real Harry, but then Harry pretty much hit Olga, and Sarah instantly knew that was him. I actually love, and I mentioned this before. I obviously love the relationship between Sarah and Harry. And how Harry, I'm sorry. So onto Ian Marter. I think he did an amazing job as well. I think Terror of the Zygons is Ian Marter's best performance as Ian because he pretty much had to do double duty as Zygon Harry and obviously Harry Sullivan himself. Now, for Zygon Harry was very creepy and very intimidating, and I think Ian Marter did a very good job portraying that side. Obviously, Harry departs in this story in a very abrupt manner, and I think Harry's departure is probably one of my main problems of this story, but I'll get to that a bit later. But Harry Sullivan does actually return in the Android Invasion later on in the season, so we get to see Harry for at least one last time before he's gone for good. So that was pretty good to see him again. Back in this story for the first time since Robert. Now we're pretty good here, and obviously this is the last time we'll see the Brigadier and Benton together, and pretty much Unit's time is pretty much coming to a close in this season, at the end of this season. So it's definitely, so this is pretty much like a mini impromptu goodbye for the Brigadier and Benton, but they do come back in later stories. Nicholas Courtney was great as the Brigadier, and I loved how the Brigadier was pretty much embracing his Scottish roots by wearing a kilt at the start and the end of the story. But obviously after he meets the Doctor and the Doctor meets him in the kilt, the Brigadier pretty much just changes back. And so obviously, as I mentioned before, this is the last time we're going to see the Brigadier until Mordred Undead in season 20. And obviously, I think Nicholas Courtney actually suggested to Philip Hinchcliffe that the Brigadier should actually die in this story, but Hinchcliffe didn't like that idea because he didn't want such an important character to die so soon. And I really like Philip Hinchcliffe for making that decision, because if the Brigadier actually died in the story, they'd been very distraught, to say this least. So this is the Brigadier's last appearance until, as I mentioned before, season 20. Sergeant Benton, or should I say RSM Benton, was great in the story as well. Well, he was good from what he did good from what he was given, but I wish he did more, so to speak. But I'll get to more about that later. But so obviously Benton actually does return later on in the season in the Android Invasion as well. So yeah. So onto the side cast. They're all good, but even though most of the other side casts were pretty much impersonated by Zygons. First off, we had the Duke of Fogiel. He was a Scottish nobleman and the president of the Scottish Energy Commission. He was impersonated by Broughton, and Broughton Fogiel was pretty much brought the Doctor and Sarah and Harry to the Brigadier unknowingly. And I liked how the real Duke of Fogiel was pretty much a key to help resolve the story when it turns out that the meeting in London that Broughton was going to attack, the Duke of Fogiel was actually meant to have attended, and that was a pretty good call as well. Sister Lamont, she was a nurse working at the Oli-Versal hospital. She was impersonated by one of the Zygons, and then the Doctor later rescued her alongside the real Duke and Cable. Angus, he was the landlord of the Fox Inn where unit had been operating. He claimed to have had the second sight because he was the seventh son of a seventh son. Try saying that multiple times. I really liked his character, and I was actually quite sad when Zygon's sister Lamont pretty much killed him because he was a nice character. I was really disappointed that he actually died, and I do kind of wish that they explored his supposed second sight. That would probably been helpful for the story, or so to speak, and they pretty much could have used him to. They actually did, but they could actually use him to properly notice that the Zygons were actually spying on them. So you also had Kaba. I think he was the gameskeeper for the Duke of Forgil, and his Zygon double was responsible for killing Monroe and shooting Harry, which pretty much landed Harry in the hospital. We had Harko. He was one of the officials on the oil rig. He doesn't have a great deal to do, but he was pretty much there for the story. So he's pretty much has a familiar face. And obviously, we had Monroe. I think he was the guy at the beginning that was the radio operator that he was able to escape the oil rig before the Scarison had actually destroyed it, and then he was later killed by Zygon Kaba. To the enemies of the story, we have the Zygons making their debut alongside their leader Broton. The Zygons were great villains and they were very creepy. I liked their design. I liked how alien they looked. It's a shame they don't appear in any other classic Who story, but after this one, because they had such an impressive debut, it was a bit disappointing not to see them in any more stories, but hey, it works, I guess. And the next time we'll actually see the Zygons in Doctor Who will be Doctor Who's 50th anniversary special, The Day of the Doctor, where they actually do play an important part of the story. And obviously in Series 9's Zygon Invasion, the Zygon Inversion, which pretty much was a continuation from Day of the Doctor, but when I get to that, I'll get to that. Broton was a great villain and a great leader for the Zygons. I pretty much liked how him and the Zygons were pretty much 2 steps ahead of the Doctor and unit every single time. I think that's what pretty much made them dastardly in my opinion. And yeah, we also had the Scarazon. The Scarazon was a large cyborg creature that was pretty much supplying the Zygons with their milk, so to speak. The Scarazon was actually dangerous and pretty much can kill anyone with just one stomp. And it was pretty much implied that the Zygons alongside the Scarazon had been on Earth for a very long time, since the 12th century, and it was so dangerous that if anyone or anything came into range of its transceiver, the Scarazon would pretty much just destroy it. And I think it was also heavily implied that the Scarazon was pretty much the Loch Ness Monster, and I think Sarah Jane even said in School Reunion in Series 2 when she said that she meant the Loch Ness Monster, obviously I think she was referring to the Scarazon. So the main fault I have with this story was Harry's departure. It felt abrupt, and it was as if the Doctor didn't really care that he was going, because basically the scene went like this. The Doctor was like pretty much saying, well, you have to go back to London now. Harry, do you want to come with me? And then the Doctor was, Harry, do you want to come with me? And Harry was like, no, thank you, Doctor. I think I might stay here. And then obviously he asked the Brigadier and others, and then Sarah Jane pretty much just follows the Doctor into the TARDIS, and they just depart, but they actually end up being driven around so many places. So yeah, it is a bit. I mean, if Ian Moss actually wanted to leave, I mean, I guess they could have at least given him a better exit than this one. I mean, I know he actually comes back in the Android Invasion, but this departure felt very weak, so to speak. The same could be said for the Brigadier, but as I said, I think they wanted to bring him back for other stories. For example, I think they wanted to bring him back for the Android Invasion, but Nicholas Courtney wasn't available, and Seeds of Doom as well, but he was unavailable for that as well. Well, so I guess we won't see the Brigadier for another 8 years. Yeah, so another fault I have was how Benton was used. I mean, I do feel he could have done a little bit more in this story. I mean, there's no reason why he couldn't, because he did actually do a lot in some stories, like let's say like the early Pertwee stories, and even the Three Doctors, which I actually think is John Levine's best performance as Benton. But hey, so to speak, he could have been better. So to conclude, Terror of the Zygons is probably one of the highlights of the Tom Baker era, and the Philip Hinchcliffe era overall, near flawless, and then there's a definite must see. So I will give Terror of the Zygons a 9.5 out of 10. My next review will be Planet of Evil, a decent underrated story in my opinion. So thanks for watching this review. Please let me know your thoughts of Terror of the Zygons and this review as well. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And please join my Discord server if you want to do so. And the description link for the Discord server will be in my description box. Until then, guys, see you later.